Hi, in this video, I'll share my experience with ShinHan's designer gouache. I picked out 8 colors that filled in some of what I was missing after collecting ShinHan's Pass paints. If you are not familiar with Pass, that is ShinHan's hybrid watercolor gouache. It's one of the least expensive opaque watercolor options available individually. Pass is a little easier to achieve smoother gradients as you dilute it from opaque to a more watered down transparent wash compared to gouache. This gouache is a thicker body paint that would require a bit more thinning down with the water in a palette first to behave like watercolor. While Pass paints are a bit cheaper, this designer gouache line is also competitively priced at about $4 to $6 a tube, with just a few higher cost pigment options like cadmium reds and a cobalt blue that go up to about $10 a tube. This is definitely a decent gouache brand with a lot of options for those who appreciate the freedom to pick and choose from a variety of lightfast, fugitive, single, or multi-pigment colors. I do believe most of the colors are worth the price, but there are some quirks to mention. As soon as I opened these paints, I noticed a bit of a chemical smell and some texture inconsistency between colors. This could partially be due to the fact that heavy pigments like cobalts, cadmiums, titanium, or granulating colors have an increased tendency to separate from binder fluid in tubes. This does happen with other brands to some extent as well, but I usually only see that after long-term storage, though temperatures during shipping may have sped up this process. I don't know how common this problem is for the rest of the range, but I had to spend a lot of time with a needle tool mixing 4 of 8 of my colors back together before I could start painting. I'll spare you from watching me stir each tube, but there were alternating pools of liquid and thicker clumps throughout the tubes of both cobalts, cadmium red, and the raw sienna. Afterwards, my cobalt green pale remained very liquidy compared to the more creamy consistency of the other tubes. On the bright side, once dry, the excess binder helped the cobalt green pale to not crack as badly as the others. My go-to gouache for using from dry is M-Gram. They are more expensive but have a higher pigment load, which can be diluted a bit more than these before losing opacity. And because they use honey in their binder, their gouache is less prone to cracking into tiny pieces when dry. You may find that the stirring of a drop of honey or vegetable glycerin into ShinHan gouache before it dries will help reduce cracking. Both ShinHan gouache and Pass paints crack when dry, but they do re-wet very easily. Since high viscosity paint can form tons of tiny bubbles if you scrub it too much, I recommend using these either straight from the tube or being prepared to add a humectant. They offer lots of options for color mixing, but I was disappointed at the lack of a lightfast cool red in this catalog. The absence of a magenta like PR122 or PV19 means that anyone concerned about light fastness for art to sell or long-term wall display is limited to warmer reds like PR108 or PR254. I made a lot of notes on the ShinHan gouache color chart to help point out which colors are made with pigments known to have fading problems. ShinHan's lightfast ratings do not seem reliable. There's a lot of quirky ratings, some too high and some too low. For example, they marked alizarin crimson PR83 at the same star rating as the much more lightfast phthalo blue PB15 or green PG7. I'll put a link in the description if you'd like to take your time to review the chart, and I also post the swatch card pictures on my website's written review pages. The 48 Pass color catalog does not include cobalts, cadmiums, or metallics, and many of the colors are fugitive, so I was really happy to see that ShinHan's new designer gouache line includes a decent selection of light-fast options like cadmium reds, yellows, cobalt blues, including a really low-priced turquoise, and some less common earthy brown pigments like PY119 and PBR8. As a pigment enthusiast, I like to collect uncommon pigments and dyes just to see what they're like. PR17 is not commonly used in other brands, but I did not buy the gouache version since I already own this carmine color in Pass. There are differences in pigments used between Pass and the gouache line, some being more drastic than others. There's a different fluorescent dye being used in the Opera Pink, though they look very similar. Pass and ShinHan's PWC watercolor offers a sepia as a mixture of PR101 and PBK11, but the gouache sepia is PBR8. There's no PBK31 Perylene green in the gouache. Instead, they made a shadow green pale mixture of PG17, PBK11, and chalk PW18. So if you own multiple ShinHan products, it's good to note that the pigments and light fastness between similar colors may not be the same. The quality compared to other gouache brands is somewhere in the middle. These are an upgrade in performance and light fastness compared to bargain gouache sets such as Hemi or Ardex, and also better than some similarly priced individual tube brands like Daler-Rowney Designer or Talent Gouache. ShinHan gouache re-wets easier than Winsor & Newton, but the opacity and pigment load is slightly lacking against them and other top quality brands like Holbein, M. Graham, and Schmincke. Some other brands like My Mary Gouache seem to have more of a buttery smooth formula that really help you with streak-free coverage and less brush drag. When I start to paint with the ShinHan gouache, I felt like I had to fumble a bit to get the water ratio right to help facilitate flow. This paint can absolutely be used to make great artwork, but there's a much more delicate water balance needed here to get even coverage than I have experienced in other gouaches. Let me know if you're interested in seeing more gouache reviews, and I'll go into more detail on each of those other brands in separate videos. Overall, once I got past stirring the binder back into these paints, deciding to use them from the tube in a palette where I could mix them with enough water to flow better, I really enjoyed working with them. Like most gouache, they reactivate, erase, and lift easily with water while working over dry layers. So I made sure to pay attention to using the most wet washes as the bottom layers, gradually working towards drier, thick strokes and highlights on top. These were all opaque enough to cover up toned paper as well as on top of other painted colors. The opacity gives you the freedom to work light to dark or dark to light in a different way than transparent watercolor. I'll put links to my extended written review and any other art supplies I used in this video in the description section. I hope this was helpful. Let me know what you think about these. If you'd like to see more, you can find all of my detailed swatch card images, results from my independent lightfast testing, and other art supply reviews on my website. I'm currently building a huge pigment database where thousands of colors can be compared side by side with paint from other brands. Updates about this project, along with line art drawings and high-res color scans, are also available on Patreon. Thanks for watching.